Okay guys, so welcome to stage 6 of the OpenRC tractor. In this video we'll be putting together the leveler. Quite an interesting piece. We're going to be playing with a different filament today, a flexible filament. We'll have a look at the parts that we need for it. We'll also, as usual, we'll look at the parts that we'll need in 4 stages time. And then we'll build it. So yeah, let's crack on. Okay guys, so welcome to stage 6 of the OpenRC tractor. In this video we'll be putting together the leveler. Quite an interesting piece. We're going to be playing with a different filament today, a flexible filament. We'll have a look at the parts that we need for it. We'll also, as usual, we'll look at the parts that we'll need in 4 stages time. And then we'll build it. So yeah, let's crack on. Okay, so I've had to split the prints into 3. The reason for that is you've got, well, I've recommended some coloured parts, which I'm going to actually do in green, and we've got some black parts and we've got some flexible parts. So these are the black parts. These will take just under 7 hours. You see there we've got our universal hook, which we've seen before, and then we've got some wheel blocks and some wheel arms. These will create the wheels for the leveler. Next we have the coloured parts, and again this is another 7-hour print. Now note that I've put the leveler body at a diagonal, and the reason for this, it will fit across the print bed, but I've found that it warps because it's such a thin piece. If you haven't got that print bed absolutely level, and I'm talking to the micron, it will warp. So I've put it at a diagonal angle, which then puts less of an emphasis on the level in the, as you see on the top left and the bottom right. I've also put a brim on it. Now what a brim will do is it will create a border all around. As you can see there, you've got this blue border. What that will do is it will give it more surface area. The more surface area there is, the less chance there is of actually warping. If you put this across or up and down, there wouldn't be enough space for the brim, but this one does actually come out okay. And then the 2 little circles that you can see, they're the wheels. So now on to the last piece, and this is the flexible materials. Now it's 3 hours and 51 minutes, let's call it 4 hours. You may be saying, do you know what, I've actually forgotten to place one of those pieces on. I do apologise. It'll probably take more like 4 hours. So we have, sorry, I've actually done too many pieces there. My bad. So we only need one of those long pieces. I do apologise. So let's reslice. Whoops. That's this is what happens when you get click happy. So what we've got there, we've got the 2 circles, they're tyres, and then we've got one long piece. That's the piece of flexible that's going to go across the long end of. Do you know what? I'm surprised there. It's only 3 hours. Never mind. So this piece there is the piece that goes along the main body of the leveler, and these 2 will go on the sides. Now normally I print at a print speed of about 60 millimeters per second. With flexibles you need to keep it really low. You see there I've got it set for 20, and that is correct. I'm printing this at about 1/3 of the normal speed. In addition, my print temperature is much higher. Normally you're talking about a print of around about 190 degrees, 200. This one is 240, and that's actually as low as I can get away with. If you can do 0 infill, I think I've actually put some, yeah, I've put 10% infill. Normally with a tyre I wouldn't put any infill. The reason I've put in 10% is I'm really worrying about this top layer on, because it's so flat. I worry about the bridging. So if I can just move this down a little bit, there we go. So I don't know how well you can see this, but once you get to this layer, there isn't an awful lot. Let's do that. Are we there yet? There we go. So once we're actually once it's coming across there, I'd be worried about any sagging in the middle. So just by having this little bit of infill, not a lot, maybe 5% would do it. Maybe a different kind of infill. This is something you want to experiment with. The tyres, I would do 0 infill with a large wall, but this piece, it's just meant to be a little bit flexible. I'll show you in a moment, but it's just meant to, basically this is meant to be not rigid, and it fits that description perfectly. Okay, so I've been having a little bit of problem with my camera, or my software, so I am going to split these into little sections, so you will see some annoying flashes, and I do apologise. So the first of all, the colour pieces. This is the body. It actually prints this way up, and the reason I want it printing this way up is because you've got a little tiny bit of detail along the top, but it will actually go this way up on the final model. So obviously you've got a few little holes there. I don't want to open this up too much because it's so small, but in there we have 2 wheels, and they are less than a centimetre, very, very small, so keep those safe. So on to the black parts. We have the universal hook, which you've seen before. This one, as you can tell, or not tell, there we go. You can tell that one's been printed with no supports because we've got a very slight bridging. Obviously this is how it's come out on my printer. It may not come out the same on yours. So we've got a couple of wheel arms. We've got a hole at the bottom and 4 at the top, and there's 2 of those. And this is the wheel block, I think it's called. So this end will screw to the leveler, and the wheel arms will go in there, and they'll be multi-adjustable. So the flexible parts, we have 2 tyres, and these are very, very hard because we've done quite a high infill, and this does have a high shore hardness. Now what shore hardness means is how flexible it is. This has got a shore hardness of 98A. This is filamentum. Now shore hardness 98A, for those that don't understand what the numbers mean, this is about as hard as a shoe sole. Obviously if you buy a pair of smart shoes, it's got a nice black flexible sole on the bottom. This is about as hard as that. The lower the number, the softer, and you can get right down to, I think, around about 20 or 30, which is about the same hardness as rubber, like in a right pencil eraser. So there's the wheels. We've got 2 flexible, I forget what these are called now, but this is, well, it's rubber. So this one's going to go there, like so, and one goes on the side. These are a little bit harder because obviously the longer it is, the more flex it has, but you can see it's quite flexible. Okay, we'll assemble it then. Okay, so initial assembly, the order that you assemble the initial parts is purely down to you. The first few parts will be quite easy to assemble, but as you add more parts you'll have less room. But I find that whatever you do, assemble this piece last. So I think what we'll do is we will assemble the wheels, then the wheel arms, then the flexible pieces, and then the wheel arms. So what I'll do is I will make these, and then I will speed them up. So to do the wheels, we want some short nuts. I'm trying to remember, I cannot always remember the sizes, so let's go for, I mean obviously what you want to do is you want to set that, that's going to be too small, isn't it? So the wheels, the actual wheels, we want to assemble with a 16mm button head screw, and that will go on like so, and it looks like there's a lot left over, but we're going to have to put a nylock on the end there. Sorry, my bad. What we want to do is, before we start the wheels, we want to put the tyres on. So have a look at the flat sides. There is actually a slight bevel, so it's actually slightly smaller on this side, and I believe there's also one on this side. However, I'm going to ignore it because I want the flat side of the tyre with the flat side of the wheel, so there's a little bit of a dull effect there. That's just where it's been on the print bed. You see it's shinier there, so I'm going to pop the top of the wheel into the bottom of the tyre, and as you see, it flies everywhere, and I'm just going to push that into there, and there is your tyre. So we'll just keep pushing that through. There we go, voila, there's one tyre done. So and the same with the other one. Whoops, I'm really not good with these tiny parts. Do a push. Now if this tyre was made of PLA, this would actually be impossible, because it does need to be a little bit of a flex. If you struggle like I just have, pop it on the table and pop something larger and hard, and we'll just push that in like so. Perfect. So right, so I will get on with assembly. So the actual wheels, to put the wheels on, I'm using a 16mm button. I will then tighten that up with a couple of nylock nuts. Now if you don't have a socket set, I do have a socket set. If you don't, just use a pair of pliers. Once you pop the nut through, you'll hold the nylock nut down and then just continue screwing. Okay, so what I've done is I've put the wheels in. I then tightened it up. Once it's tight, you won't be able to move the wheels. So I've just backed off that last nut, that last bolt, just until they'll be able to spin freely. These will never spin as freely as the main wheels on the tractor because there's no bearing in them. But this is why you have the nylock. That nylock will stop it from undoing. So just so long as you've got some movement. So what we'll do now is we will pop these onto the wheel blocks, and then we'll be able to assemble those later on. And okay, so you will need just a normal nut will do for these, and you will need a screw, a bolt that will go all the way through, that will give you enough space, and I think the 16mm is perfect there. So we'll just crack on with those. So I've put the wheel arms on, and now what I've done is, doesn't matter which way round you put the wheels, but, and I've actually put the nuts round the wrong way on one of them, but I'll go through that later on. Doesn't matter which way round you go, so long as they're pointing in different directions. They will actually go on like that. Now what I've tried to do, I know that this one will go there. So that means that this side is going to be easier to see. So I've put the button heads on that side. It's probably the lesser of two evils, but I think this is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than the nuts. So that's obviously going on like that. I think that's going on that way. So when that comes to go on, so what I'll do is off camera I'll change these, and then we'll get on with the flexible parts. Okay, so I've adjusted my wheels. I can't believe I've done that. So they're now actually all mirror image of each other, so they can go on later. So the next stage is to pop on the rubber parts. Now, whichever way you do this, one will get in the way of the other. So I'm actually going to be popping the long piece on first. And what we'll need to do is we'll need to assemble this with 8mm M3 buttons. M3 8mm button, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble this so that the button heads are showing from the outside. Again, that's for aesthetic reasons. So what we'll do is we'll just pop a couple of these in, and we will attach these with a nut. Now, one thing to note, because this is flexible material, if you tighten this too much, it's going to squish against the rubber, so you'll need to just tighten the nut just enough. If you are worried that the nut will come off, you could always use something like thread locker, and this acts as, I don't know technical terms, but in effect it acts like a mild glue. So what will happen is once you've got that nut on there with some thread lock, once the thread lock dries, it won't come off, it will be kind of glued on. Okay, so I'm going to crack on with this, and then once we've done, we will get on with the side pieces. So there is the first piece done, and I'm really happy with that. I mean, this is the second time I've done this, so it's bound to come out better than the first. So that's quite neat and tidy. Maybe for this piece we didn't need 8mm buttons. Perhaps we could have got away with 6mm, but to be honest with you, this is all going to be on the inside, so it won't be seen much anyway. Obviously you can tailor this to your needs. I haven't put the screws, the bolts in too tight. You can just see there's a little tiny bow there. Maybe I need to back that one off, but it does demonstrate well what happens if you screw it in too tight. So guys, I'm going to get on with the sides in exactly the same way, and that should finish off the flexible parts. Okay, so I've stopped at 1. Now you will notice that whereas this piece goes off at an angle, the support, it doesn't actually follow the support, so you've got a little bit of a thick part there. That's absolutely fine, you won't see that. And I've put the bolts in just enough so that they're tight. If you notice there that if I screw this any hard, well, it won't actually go any harder, but it'll start to rotate. You can't see it because of the head, but if I screw that any tighter, it'll start to bow. But I'm really happy with that. That flexes, but I have noticed that this is on the inside and this is on the outside, which is a little bit unusual, but I'm sure I always have faith in Mr. Makit. So right, so I shall just finish off the next one, then we'll look at popping the wheels on. Okay, I did actually put the nuts on. I thought I'll do it off camera. I don't like doing stuff off camera, but to be honest with you, tightening 3 nuts up on camera just seemed a little bit of a waste to me. So next we'll put the wheels on. Now there's a multitude of ways that the wheels are going on. I've actually decided to put my wheels on so they're pointing outwards and they're pointing down. You'll see pictures online of them up. I have contacted Mr. Makit, but I haven't yet had a reply back. That's not his fault. That's I've only just sent the email, so if you give him he hasn't had a reasonable time yet to reply. So I don't understand why they're up. But what I'm going to do is, because you've got the 2 nuts here, if you want to change the wheels, what I'm going to recommend is, now you've put these nuts on, you can just pop a little tiny dab of super glue round about there, just to super glue those nuts on. Don't get it on the thread. And then if you ever want to change the wheels, all you got to do is undo these two bolts. They'll come out, the wheel will come out, you can reposition it, and then it's in. So to attach these, first thing you need, well, you need a couple of M3 nuts, and then you will need, I believe, 8mm countersunk screws. There we go. So what we need to do, you see that there's a hole in the top of the wheel block there and one in the bottom, and we just need to just pop a nut into there. That went in beautifully. And then we'll pop another one into there, and then hold the top and the bottom, pop in 2 M3 8mm bolts like so, and then remember which way is, you have to hold these in the right way so that you don't get things. So what we'll then do is we will line these holes there where the nuts have fallen with this, and the nuts falling out. It is a bit fiddly, as you can see. You can always pop in a drop of PVA glue into those nuts and that will hold. In fact, let's get rid of one of those. Let's get the first one in. It'll be far easier to focus on just the one, and this won't take many turns, but once it's in, and one of the nuts has fallen out. So let's change tactics. Let's focus purely on the one nut, and we'll focus on what's going to be the bottom. We can hold it at an angle then, and gravity will help prevent that from falling out. And then we'll screw this up. That's not going in. Why is that not connecting? There we go. So we'll do that almost fully tight, because if we do it tight we won't be able to rotate it. So we just, you can't see this, but we want to just rotate it so that the hole, see if I can find a small something small, there we go. So we need to make sure there's room there for something to go in. So this is now going to become instantly fiddly. We're going to pop the nut in there. Now we're working from this angle, because again we want gravity on our side, and then we'll pop that M8 countersunk screw into there, and then we can tighten that up. Now that hole appears to be a little bit small, large, sorry, so I'm just going to jam something into there just to stop the nut from rotating, and then there we go, we can tighten that up. This one seems to be absolutely fine. So that's that wheel on. So I'll speed this up while I do the second one, and hopefully I won't make quite so much of a mess as the last one. So there we go guys, we've got two wheels on it. Now don't forget, if you're going to do the two nuts separately, do the bottom bit first, because as you can see it's going to be quite difficult to drop a nut into there, whereas on the top it's going to be quite easy. So drop a nut into the bottom one, use gravity, do it upside down, tighten that first one up, turn it upside down, drop a nut into there, and then tighten it up. In both of my cases, and it's probably down to the printer tolerances, not the design, but that little hole there was slightly larger than the nut, so the nut was able to rotate. So I just jammed something into there. The second time, you see I jammed a screwdriver in, and that just fills that gap and it stops that nut from rotating while I tightened it up. So I've got this set so that the wheels are actually the wrong way round again, look, so that's not a problem. I can just switch those round, turn them round, but I've got the wheels so they're just slightly lower than the leveler, so the leveler can move on wheels. So if I level anything, it will level it to about height like that. Right, so the next stage then is to just finish it off with the universal hook. You've seen this before in a previous video, so all we need to do, and I don't think I'll need to speed this up because this is such a simple build, we need to pop a nut into there. That is struggling to go in, so we'll try the second one. So don't forget, guys, if the nut doesn't go in easily, we do have a trick at hand to help that go in. And obviously if you get your nut in at an angle, it's not going to go in properly. So we'll do my little trick on both of them. So I need to just get that out. I've pushed that in a little bit too hard. Not a problem. So what we need to do is we need to get a long screw, a screw that's far too long, and pop that in. We then screw the end of the nut onto the end. Now I actually, last time I showed you that we screw this all the way in. In some cases you don't actually need to do that. You can actually use the screw as a handle. Do you know what, this isn't going to go in, is it? I'm really not having the luck with the screws at the moment. The bolts, nuts and bolts are eluding me. So we'll just get the end of the nut on, and then what we can do in many cases is we can actually pull that on, perhaps using a pair of pliers, and we'll just pull that back, and that's gone in fine. At least if you've got most of it in, that's fine, because when we come to screw the actual bolt that we want on, that will pull that in anyway. So oh dear. So I think this is the point where I need to start saying things like fiddlesticks, because that will relieve the stress. There we go. That's gone on fine. Isn't it funny how saying a naughty word can actually calm you down? Right, there we go. That nut is in there absolutely fine. So we can take this bolt out and we'll pop that away. So now we need two 8mm countersunk screws, which I'm surprised I didn't actually get those ready. So we'll do this one at a time. So you need to make sure this is the right way round. This is the bottom, and then this is the bottom, and this is the top. So it needs to go in this way round. So what we'll do is we'll drop, sorry, it goes this way round. So we'll just drop a, so you see now why I've recommended that you put the universal hook on last. So that's gone in there fine, and that's not connecting. Perhaps it's too short. Do you know what? Let's go for 10mm. I'm really sorry when I tell you the wrong screw. Or maybe I've just not pulled the nut in quite enough. Maybe I have picked the wrong screw. So I'm just going to try that with an 8mm again. Now that I've bolted, I think actually 8mm is the correct screw bolt. Is it a bolt or is it a screw? I personally think if it's got a screw thread, it's a screw. However, if it's intended to put a nut on the end, it then becomes a bolt. But I'm not an expert. So that is the 8mm in. So it was just that I hadn't pulled the nut in properly. So we'll see if I've done better with this one. So 8mm in there. We'll just, oh, that's gone in perfect. So I have put the nut in. So remember, we didn't put this one in fully because we wanted it to rotate just in case. And there we go, guys. There is, apart from the wheels are the wrong way round, there is my completed leveler. And I really like this. I think this is really good. The last three attachments we've made, it really gives a sense of the width of the tractor. And you know, most of us have seen a tractor, although we don't know the dimensions, we know roughly the difference between the width, proportionally the difference between the width of the back and the length. So now that we know roughly the width of the tractor, we can now begin to imagine the length of the tractor. So yeah, that's it for this week. Now the next 3 videos will be coming out next month. Today, if all's gone as planned, is a Saturday, so I will be returning to live streaming next week. Just to remind you, the reason I do these videos, I do 3 live builds, 1 a week, every Saturday, and then the 4th week I actually do pre-recorded videos now. This is so that you've got you're able to follow just a quicker build if you prefer, but also it gives you a little bit of content while I'm out grafting really hard at work, working my late shifts. So yeah, that's it for this build. So I'll leave you with a lovely picture of this this leveler, and then hopefully I'll see you on the live builds. But if not, I hope to catch you next month. Okay guys, take care.